the patient how Charles was laying when you first observed him?
Yes, ma'am. He was laying supine. He was laying on his back. As we entered, his head was towards us, so geographically, I think north. So that's how he was laying supine.
Do you recall anything about his arms or hands where they were?
I don't. To his sides. I don't recall, honestly.
Did you observe any injuries to Charles, to this patient?
Yes, he had evidently a gunshot wound to his center chest. Okay. Hole in the shirt and a small amount of blood.
Did you recall or notice anything about where the blood was pooling from that shot to the chest?
At that time, I did not, because we have to expose the patient, and the so he's a big guy, so he had a small amount of blood above his sternum.
I'm showing you Exhibit 3 that's previously been admitted. Does that look like?
If it adjusts a little bit, but
okay.
You can attempt.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Are you able to see that there?
Yes.
Kind of. Does this look like the patient that you were working on?
Yes.
And in this, do you see the blood pooling in Exhibit 3 there?
Yes.
Is that sort of what you were talking about?
Yes. Here in around the collarbone. So there's a divot here. That.
Would you describe this patient as a fit man?
He seemed to be, yes.
When you saw that pooling like that, did that stand out to you or seem at all impactful in your decision of whether or not CPR had been given prior to your arrival?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because had adequate CPR been given there, I would have expected more blood possibly on there and perhaps a pool of blood under him. I didn't see any blood under him. I mean, when we first got there.
So when you guys first arrived, let's go back to sort of describing the scene. You said that you didn't notice any blood pooling under him.
I did not.
And is that something that you guys are cognizant of since you're going to have to get down and around him?
Yes, but we're more cognizant of it because it would indicate an exit wound. And obviously, the more blood there is, the more the heart was beating or CPR was being done.
Okay. So both the lack of spreading on him is one indication that kind of made you question if CPR had been given?
Yes, ma'am.
And the lack of pooling of blood underneath him was another sort of
yes.
flag to you that maybe CPR had not been given.
And no one was doing CPR when we got there. Would have been the primary indicator to me. And I say that because if CPR were in progress by PD, if there were an officer there doing CPR, then they would have continued to do CPR until we relieved them.
If a person is shot and deceased and you start giving them compressions, can you still push blood out of those wounds?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, at some point when fire arrives and they are assessing a patient, do they, I'm going to put up Exhibit 4 here, do you need to try to remove any garments that might be around those potential gunshot wounds?
Yes, you would expose the patient.
Why is that?
Well, because you don't know for sure how many gunshots there are. You check for exit wounds. Some gunshot wounds, some entry wounds are minimal. You wouldn't see them. You could go through a shirt and not see them. So you expose the patient.
Okay. I have Exhibit 4 up here from body cam from a officer that's previously been admitted. Do you recognize who these people are and where this is?
Yes, ma'am.
And is this you?
It is.
So in this case, at some point, was Charles's shirt cut in any way to allow access to those gunshot wounds?
That would be the norm. Is at this point they would be cutting his shirt.
Do you recall from this scene how many gunshot wounds you observed to the front of Mr. Vallow?
I believe 2.
Now, when you guys first arrived on scene, do you check the pulse? What do you do when you first get there?
Yes, you would check for pulses, carotid pulse, and obvious signs of life, breathing, so chest rise and fall, as you are walking up to a patient.
So in this case, for Charles Vallow, did you guys find a pulse?
No, ma'am.
Did you notice him breathing?
No.
Do you do any other assessments before you start compressions?
No.
So if he's not breathing and you don't see that he has a pulse, why begin CPR? Why start compressions?
Because you don't know how long he has not been breathing or not had a pulse.
Okay.
He could have just stopped those things moments before we got there, which would make him a viable candidate, or a viable patient, rather.
And does, again, the fact that you believe CPR had been performed prior to you arriving also play into your decision to
Yes.
see if he's viable?
Yes.
As other officers are doing compressions, what are you doing there?
So I am charting. So I am, in this particular case, I was running the call. So I'm going down a checklist, gathering information, listening to what they're telling me, and having them. I'm directing them throughout the call.
Okay. So at some point, are compressions stopped to assess the patient in other ways?
Yes, after a heart monitor is on.
Okay. And so are compressions able to be performed while someone else is getting the heart monitor ready?
Yes, compressions continue throughout until you stop compressions to check for pulses.
Okay. Do you ever want to check a patient who you see have gunshot wounds, such as Mr. Vallow here, to see if there's exit wounds?
Yes, ma'am, immediately. So they would have cut his shirt, taken his shirt off, rolled him, checked for exit wounds, and then rolled him back and continued compressions.
In this case, are you documenting your observations and others about what you observed when he was rolled?
Yes.
So when he's rolled, you're looking at his back?
Back, right, from the back of the head to the back of the feet.
Okay. So he's completely rolled over so that you can see his back?
Yes.
Did you notice anything about Mr. Vallow's back that may have indicated he'd been there for significantly longer than you originally thought?
He did have lividity. So there was modeling, skin modeling and lividity. Once the shirt comes off, then you could see modeling on the skin, and lividity had begun to form.
Can you tell us what modeling means?
Modeling is sort of a patchy looking skin caused from hypoxia or not enough oxygen getting to the skin. I mean, you can have mottled skin for different reasons, but in this case, it would be from his heart not beating.
Okay. And then you said lividity. What does
Yes,
that
ma'am.
mean?
So lividity is the pooling of blood, and that takes longer, much longer. So the blood will begin to leave the tissues and gravity drain to the lowest part of the body.
So when the blood isn't being circulated by either CPR or the heart, the blood just starts to pool there.
Yes.
And so you noticed that as well when he was rolled?
Yes.
Did you notice any exit wounds?
I did notice at least one exit wound, yes.
After you looked at his back, do you recall, I guess, when in this process you checked his heart monitor, when that was done?
I do not. This all happens simultaneously. You asked what these different people are doing. They're doing all of those things simultaneously. So the patient is exposed, CPR has begun, and the evaluation, the rest of the evaluation is happening. So timeline, it's on the heart monitor, I'm sure, but a lot of it happens simultaneously. That answer the question you asked that again? I'm sorry.
I believe so. Do you recall what the heart monitor results were?
Asystole. No electrical rhythm in the heart. Flat line for.
Do you ever look at a patient's pupils?
Yes, ma'am. Always.
What's that for?
Because if it's just a brain function. If you shine light on pupils, they react. When the brain stops to function, hypoxia sets in. The pupils will dilate and remain fixed, so they won't change. They're non-reactive to light.
What did you see with Mr. Vallow?
They were fixed and non-reactive.
So we heard about the pooling of the blood on Mr. Vallow when you first arrived. As CPR was being done, did you notice any blood being pushed out of his body?
A little bit more. Again, he is on his back. Exit wound was in his back, but yes, we increased the amount of blood under the patient by doing CPR.
When you first arrived, did you notice any active bleeding?
No, ma'am.
What's the relevance of no active bleeding?
No heartbeat.
Were you advised of Scott Cowden's information about when he started CPR, hearing the crunch, or feeling, I guess, the crunch of him performing CPR?
Was I advised of it?
Yeah, did he let you know that?
No, but that would be expected.
And is that expected if CPR hadn't been performed?
No, not adequately. Again, big guy, so that the sternum will, the cartilage holding the sternum to the ribs breaks. It gives way, so, and that actually makes CPR much easier.
In this case, you came in, he wasn't breathing, he was pulseless, his pupils were dilated, the heart monitor said there was no activity, correct?
Yes.
When you looked at his back, you noticed both mottling, which meant that the blood wasn't moving through his body?
Yes, and modeling was on the front as well.
Okay.
So as that blood pools, so it leaves the tissue, that's gonna hasten the modeling part of it.
So you noticed that when the shirt was then cut and
Yes.
he was exposed,
Yes.
as well as when he was rolled.
Yes.
And then you also noticed on the back the lividity of the blood pooling there.
Yes.
When you, I guess, obtained all of that information, did you end life-saving measures?
Yes.
Who decides to end life-saving measures?
I do, as well as the rest of the crew. So Scott Cowden is also a paramedic, and he concurred. So then we call that in, and we cease life-saving function, or attempts rather.
When you cease life-saving measures at a scene where someone has been shot and is now deceased at the scene, do you leave sort of any attached medical devices with him?
Well, as little as possible. So what would have been left on him would have been defibrillator pads, probably EKG electrodes, and probably a CPR puck.
Now, when you arrived on scene or when you were exiting, did you ever notice any male outside that might have been with some police officers?
Oh, a person?
Yeah.
Yes. One person, one male.
And did you notice him when you arrived or when you left?
When I arrived, my job in particular is to kind of get a larger overview of the scene. So I did notice a person talking with PD.
And when you observed this person, did you notice anything that he appeared to be injured in any way?
No.
So no obvious injuries to you?
No.
If you had been asked to treat him, would you have?
Of course.
Did you see that same person outside when you left?
Yes.
And when you left, did you observe anything about him again that he appeared to be injured in any way?
No.
Did you ever see a female and a female teenager at the scene?
Yes.
Where did you see them?
They were across the street from the house we were at.
Do you see that person in the courtroom today?
I see the adult, yes.
Can you point her out and let us know what she's wearing?
Dark blazer at the defendant's table. Dark clothes, I'm not sure what it is.
Okay. State will ask the record to reflect the witness has identified the defendant.
It shall.
Did you overhear her talking or saying anything?
I did overhear her talking with the police officers, or someone said something about not getting invited to a pool party because of the commotion at the house or something. So.
What? Did you have any formal interaction with her?
No.
When you sort of completed and left this scene, looking back and assessing it based upon your training, your experience, what you observed, and what was done to Mr. Vallow at the scene, would you agree that Charles Vallow was dead before you entered the house?
Yes.
Based upon your training, your experience, what you observed, and what was done to Mr. Vallow, would you agree that it was highly unlikely that anyone had performed CPR on Charles Vallow prior to fire arriving?
Yes.
I have no other questions, Your Honor.
All right, cross.
Captain Keller.
Yes.
You were first on the scene?
The police department was first, but yes, we were the first fire unit.
First fire on the scene. Mm-hmm. And can you explain to us what staging is exactly? I'm not really sure.
Sure. Staging, when there is some violent incident, the fire department, the firefighters don't have protective equipment for that sort of a scene. So we will go to a place where close to whatever the dispatched address is, that we would be a place of safety, but close so that as soon as the scene is made safe by the police department, then we would enter into the scene.
So that would be like a couple houses away, or?
Could be a couple
Really?
houses, could be behind cover. In this case, it was gunshot was the call, so you want to make sure that you are a little ways away, you know,
Okay,
in case there was more gunshots.
right. So you parked somewhere on the street, but a couple houses down from the house, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then part of that staging is you stay there until you get the all clear?
Yes, until the police department says that it's safe to enter the scene.
Okay. And you were wearing body cam that day?
No, we don't wear body
Oh,
cameras.
you don't wear body cam? Okay. You were just that was a picture from you on the body cam?
On one
On
of the
someone
police
else's
officers,
body cam?
yes.
Okay. Okay. Do you use any instruments to obtain current body temperature? Do you guys have an instrument for that?
No.
No? Would that help you give a more approximate time of calling a time of death?
It wouldn't help me. I'm not trained to do that, so we don't have that. It's not within our scope of practice to determine that.
It's not part of paramedics training?
No.
Okay. You explained the modeling being patchy looking skin
Yes.
because of no oxygen to the skin. Is that correct?
Decreased, yes.
And so will that continue to increase? I don't really understand. Would you say modeling is complete or in progress? How does that work?
I would say in progress. As less and less tissue had oxygenation, I would say it continues to model.
So would you say it was in early progress or late progress? How would you estimate that?
I could not say early or late, just modeling.
That modeling was present
Yes, yes.
at that point. So how long would it take for modeling to become present? That's kind of my question.
I don't know how long.
So it could be like
different for different people, I suppose.
so it could be a minute, 5 minutes.
He's already indicated.
Hold on. Rephrase the question. I'll allow it, but make sure you let him answer before you ask your next question.
Okay. So it could be just a few minutes, possibly?
Possibly. I don't know.
Okay. And then lividity, you explained as a pooling of blood. The blood leaves the tissues and goes to the bottom. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And you saw that as well?
yes.
And in your estimation, would that have happened soon? You know what oh, that's not a good question. In your estimation, that had begun?
Yes.
And was it advancing how far?
He had lividity on the back of his torso,
So does lividity,
backs of his arms.
start immediately after the heart stops? Is that what you were saying?
I suppose it does.
Okay. And if you were on any kind of medication, would that affect that as well?
I couldn't say.
And what time of death did you document? You were making the document, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And what time of death did you document?
I did not put time of death, but I put a time of treatment being ceased, and I don't recall what that time was. It's on that report.
And you had stated that you were listening to dispatch on the radio, is that correct?
Yes.
So were you listening to the actual 911 operator speaking?
No, whoever is calling, if you call on the phone to a 911 operator, they would give that information to a dispatcher who would then dispatch a call with the pertinent information.
Okay, so you were getting kind of updates as it went along?
No, you get the initial call, and then if it were pertinent for us, like the scene is secure, PD says the scene is secure, go in, then we would get that. PD would call dispatch, and dispatch would then call us.
Okay, so were you aware at all that they had asked him to come outside?
No,
Okay. You just saw that he was outside, but you didn't know that the 911 operator had told him to come outside. Is that correct?
I did not know who he was or how he was involved in it when
Okay.
we arrived.
So on those dispatch updates, it wasn't saying like shooter is in-house or shooter is outside or anything like that? Okay. That wouldn't be.
Not to us.
That's what I'm saying.
That might be to the police department, but that's not something we would hear.
Okay. In this case, Captain Keller, do you know for a fact that CPR had not been given?
I do not know for a fact.
And do you know for a fact that CPR had been given?
I know for a fact that we gave CPR.
Prior to your coming in?
No.
No further questions?
All right, redirect.
Which do you see first, modeling or lividity? When the heart stops and the blood is no longer pumping.
Modeling.
Okay.
I would expect to see modeling first.
And you told us, I think on direct, that lividity is something that you see much later.
Yes. I would expect that, yes.
Have you treated patients before within a few minutes of their heart stopping?
Yes.
Do you see lividity in those people?
No.
Do you see modeling in those people?
No. You see skin conditions change in those people, gray or cooling, moist, moisture, but not modeling or lividity.
So you're not here to tell us how long it takes for those to form, right?
I don't know.
All you can tell us is that it's something that you see in patients who are deceased
Yes.
and have been deceased long enough, whatever time period that is, for that to happen.
Right. It is an indication of the patient no longer being a viable patient.
And that was one of the things that you noted and used in determining to end any life-saving measures.
Yes.
Now, is the only way to know if CPR has been given to be there with the person watching them?
No.
What else can tell you that CPR was given to a patient?
Well, PD on scene arriving would witness. The best way would be witness CPR.
That's the best way. Is there any other ways?
Well, yes. Again, you would have an indentation in the chest. The sternum would likely have been cracked loose from the rib cage, and there would be, in the case of trauma, increased bleeding. You do CPR or CCR sometimes when there's not trauma, cardiac.
In this case, were other indicators the blood that was pooling only at the neck and not spread out further?
Yes.
The lack of pooling underneath the victim?
Yes, and the mechanical action of doing compressions with a gunshot wound right there would have spread blood in that area as well. It wouldn't just have gone where gravity is.
So where you saw is where you saw the blood pooling was where gravity, a low spot.
That was my interpretation of it, yes.
And you did not observe spread blood across his chest.
No.
Would ongoing CPR movement of the blood through the body have also limited the modeling you may have seen?
Perhaps.
Ultimately, is it your opinion that it is unlikely that CPR was given to this patient prior to fire arriving?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
Are there any juror questions? I see at least one coming down. Please pass those down. Put on the white noise first. All right, we have some juror questions for you. Was there any attempt to gain venous access to administer medications to aid the heart and functioning, i.e. ephedrine? If no, why not?
It's not indicated for trauma. It doesn't, if there's no blood to pump or the heart has stopped pumping, increasing how fast the heart pumps with ephedrine would do nothing. So in trauma, it is not indicated.
Was ACLS protocol followed?
Yes.
Was there a physician patched in?
No, there's no patch required for cessation of treatment. It is part of our ability and part of our training to determine non-viability.
Are fire department personnel allowed to call a patient's death?
Yes. However, time of death is a different thing if that's what you're asking. In other words, we are allowed to stop attempting to do life-saving treatment if it's merely a recovery. So, does that answer?
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have if the defense, first of all, let me check. Are there any other juror questions for this witness? I don't see any. The defense can follow up based on those questions if you want.
No questions, Your Honor.
All right, how about the state?
Just a couple. Sir, when would you use ephedrine?
Well, if you had just asystole, but it was a cardiac-based code. If the heart had stopped due to some disease state, electric shock, for instance, you would use epi. Are you saying epinephrine
Yeah,
is what
yeah.
you're saying, right?
When you're looking at whether or not to push drugs to try to get the heart to restart, you're looking at the type of trauma that caused the heart to stop.
And how long it's been since the heart stopped.
So in a place where you said there is trauma, meaning like a gunshot wound?
Like a hole in the vessel, yes.
So that is treated differently than if someone has a heart attack and
Yes. Yes.
you were asked about...
These are all algorithms, protocols that are given for us to operate on scenes under medical control to whoever asked about the patch.
What is then the ACLS protocol?
Advanced cardiac life support. And it's just, again, it's a flow chart. Are there obvious signs of death? Yes. Stop CPR.
So here, you followed that protocol and stopped CPR.
Yes, ma'am. CCR technically, but yes.
You were asked about contacting a physician, a patch or something for a cessation of treatment.
Right.
Are there times where you do patch in with a physician?
Sure. You would patch en route, not for a code. You would patch en route and give a doctor, or actually it would be a nurse answering the phone, but you would let them know what you have and what treatment you have given and what treatment you are going to give en route to their facility to continue care. We are primarily to stabilize and turn over the patient, making it more viable for a rescue.
So when you terminate treatment because a patient is not viable, you cannot revive them, you don't need to talk to a doctor about that.
No, You need to call in that you did it. So there would have been a patch after that, but you don't have to call in to cease treatment.
So you don't need a blessing by a doctor to stop life-saving treatment?
Well, no, we have the blessing through our certifications and through our training. So we are operating under a doctor's license at any time we are operating. So that doctor or this group of doctors usually understands our training level and agrees to trains us to make that decision, yes.
And so ultimately, as a paramedic, you have the authority to use that protocol to determine when you are no longer able to revive or save the life of a patient.
Cease life-saving functions, yes.
And that's what you did here.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
All right, you can step down. We're going to take our lunch recess. I'll remind the jury of the admonition. We will resume at 1:30 p.m.
All rise for the jury.
When I read it, it was that the state disclosed what it had available to it at the time, and advancements in technology may change what was able to be extracted, but that's different than the state withholding information.
That was the state's reading of the affidavit. I think the other concern comes from the fact that back on March 18th, when the state was filing motions to preclude Lonnie Dworkin, the court had a discussion with the defendant about this, about whether or not she wanted to waive time, to have time for her expert to do this. And at that time, the court asked her if there was any one device that she wanted to review, which was, from the defendant's own mouth, Charles Vallow's phone. So now we have a motion that was filed, mind you, 7 days after they received the affidavit from their expert. So they held off on disclosing that while we weren't in trial, and then in the middle of trial, filed it, asking for information on numerous other devices that are in various other police agencies' possession. So, although I think ultimately, I mean, the big issue is clearly the state would object to any motion to dismiss. There is no exculpatory evidence. There's no even discussion of exculpatory evidence in Mr. Dworkin's statement or their very minimally fact-invasive motion, let alone any prosecutorial misconduct. But I think we're back to the issue of Mr. Dworkin and what he's going to be permitted to bring in or talk about at this point in this trial.
All right, did you want to argue that motion right now?
Not right now.
Well, when do you want to argue it?
Well, the main problem, do you want me to argue it right now?
I'm not asking you to, but I indicated when I read your motion that it does appear not to be any discovery violation, but that the state turned over the evidence that it had at the time, and advances in that software that maybe make more information available upon an extraction than was available when they did the extraction isn't a discovery violation. I'm looking at this as more of a discovery request for additional information, which at this point in the game, I'll allow you to do your discovery requests, but I don't know that any information that's discovered between now and the end of trial would be coming in because it's so late.
In reading that affidavit, I would agree with you that that was my initial thought as well. But the problem is that the problem that we have here is that that software was available and those things were available and they were not handed over from the state. They were never handed over from the state, and they've had that information for years. So that's why we filed that motion, is because of our expert was able to download the one device that we got, that he was able to see that the complete downloads were never given, that these are reports of downloads when we know that the state had available the entire complete extraction in the first place. They just didn't give us the entire extraction. They gave us the reports of the extractions, the ones that they wanted us to have. So those were available according to the technology. They just didn't give them to us on all of the devices. But we only have proof of it on one device because that's the only device that we were able to do in a timely manner.
All right. I want to clarify a little bit. They gave you the full extraction that was available to them at the time.
No, they pulled a report from the full extraction and gave us that. That's what they gave us.
State want to respond?
Your Honor, when you extract data from a device like a cell phone, it is put into a formula where it is not readable by anyone, which is why then you use the Cellbrite technology to basically parse that data into areas that we can read and view and review. So
Is that what was given to the
that is
defense?
what was given to the defense, was the 2019 or 2020 version of the Cellbrite technology that was used to take that extraction and put it into a readable form so that you can look at, for instance, not having to search through all this data to try to find out a text message. All of them are put together with dates and times and people and locations.
Your Honor, I would request that we can have a hearing on this so that I can bring in Lonnie Dworkin and he can explain that what they did not give us.
Well, just reading his affidavit is what they gave you is what they had available to them at the time. There's no affirmative duty for them to, every time a new software version comes out that makes maybe more data available, to rerun all the information.
We're not claiming that it is. We're claiming that they had a full extraction and they gave us a report of that full extraction instead of the full extraction on all the devices. It's not what only was available to them. They did have that available, they just didn't give it to us. It's cherry picking. It's cherry picking is what we got.
I don't read your own expert's affidavit the same way you're reading it, but
That's why I'd like him to be able to come in and explain it. Can we set that up?
well, we can set that up at some point, but again, this is all late and it's unlikely that anything that's happening would lead to him being allowed to testify, but maybe we'll do that this Friday or something. I don't know. We'll have to squeeze it in, but I'm not going to make the jury wait to do that.
Okay.
We'll be at recess until 1:30.
most important principle that came out of that is that they said